So I'm going to be wrapping up July. This is also going to kind of be my Booktube-a-thon wrap up because I never did one of those. The hard thing about readathons is that all the energy that you have to put into this week of reading and Twitter sprinting and Instagramming and video challenging and vlogging if you do that, it's great. But then the moment that it's done, like I find that for me, my energy plummets. So since the readathon's been done, my reading has been like minimal. I've like made no videos. It took me like an extra week to get up my third part of my Booktube-a-thon vlog, so that was late, and I'm just following suit. I'm just gonna be late with this one too, and that's just what it is. It's funny that even though I read like through the entire week of Booktube-a-thon, I still only managed to get 6 books read in the entire month of July, which is fine, but I thought that I had maybe read like 8. So I checked again, and it's still 6. But I will say that the 6 books that I read, 5 of them I really liked. 1 of them I didn't like. For the most part, most of the books were like close to a 4 or above, and for the most part, the writing in some of these books were so good. This was a really good reading month, and I'm really glad about it. So I'm gonna, as usual, I'm gonna take you through the start of the month to the end of the month, and each individual book that I read. The first book that I read was Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. This is her newest novel. I gave it a, what was it, a 3.75. So it's the story of a writer. She is found dead in the water, and a cast of characters is introduced. You're gonna find this theme with another book that I read this month, I think. Was it this month? No, I'm reading it currently. Wow. This is one of those books that you have to keep like notes on. Like I have to constantly write who's who because everyone's connected, and so this is definitely a mystery novel in that sense. You have to really pay attention to every single person, how they're connected. So I think that the characters were really distinct. The writing was really good. I really enjoyed it. Now I think that the first half of the book was at least a 4 or 5. I really liked the first half. Once the second act hit, the ending kind of fizzled out for me. It became like muddy, like so everyone was connected to each other, but then it became like too complex near the ending, a little unbelievable. Ultimately it was fine. I liked it, and I wish there were just some things, little things that were different about it, and I love the cover, so pretty good. The next book was a surprise for me. It was The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torr, and I gave this a 4.75, and oh my gosh, this was cool. It was smart, it was sexy, it was edgy. It's about a woman who has not left her house in how many years? I don't know, years, 5, 7 years, something like that. And I don't want to say anything else, basically. She's an internet sex worker, and something happens. I thought it was cool. Like, there is like cool like tidbits of like real psych in this book. I was so like, thank God there was like actual like interspersed segments about like psychological research, and like there was like citations in here. Like this person read real like studies and real articles and like included them in like a bibliography section and included them throughout the book. So it was really relieving. Whether or not she even knows anything about psych, this author, and whether or not she really thoroughly read these articles, the way that it was portrayed in this book, it made it seem like this is a person that actually has read literature on the subject of psych, rather than someone who just happened to watch the latest episode of Pretty Little Liars and think they are a PhD. I don't know why I couldn't give it the full 5, and it might just be me and like the kind of books that I like to give a 5. This isn't one of those books that I like to give a 5 to, because I don't know, maybe it's just me being snotty. Like I want to give more serious books 5s, and this wasn't like a serious novel, but it was so good. It was like I really waver on whether I should give this a 5. and I'd love to read. I know there's more books in this series. I don't know if I want to read anymore. I don't like to read the series. Like, I don't want it to ruin the experience that I had with this first one. The next one is The Uncoupling by Meg Wolitzer. Another great cover. I read some really good covers this month, but I only gave it a 3 out of 5. It's an examination of like love and sex and relationships and how your relationship changes over time. There's like this mysticism element where like this town gets sort of cursed. Women lose their libido, their desire to have sex with their husbands, and it's just how. So it starts with this like mysticism, like there's a spell that happens in some weird way, even though this is contemporary realism, and then the rest of the book is how that affects couples. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it was finely written. I think it was just too slow, the plot was too meandering, and nothing really happened. Nothing really happened. It was fine to read, and like I said, I love the cover, but it was a 3. It was okay. It didn't rock my world. The next book I read was The Girls by Emma Cline, and I gave this a 4 out of 5. And I think this has some of the best writing in any book I've read this year so far. I had to stop and several times while reading it and just absorb the beauty of random passages. Like, I had to stop at page 33 and write a status update on Goodreads about how damn good this writing is. So it's a coming of age story about a woman who was involved in a cult when she was in her like adolescence, and then since then she's an adult. This is, if you're looking for something that's fast paced, action, oh my god, edge of your seat, it's not this. This is more contemplative, it's more heavy and just meant to be absorbed. Like, I said earlier to myself that this is a book that's meant to be read like in a beach chair, like in the sun. Like, you're absorbing this book the way you'd absorb like a hot sun on a nice day. It is a little slow moving, but I didn't mind it because I thought the writing was so great. The one thing that I wish, if I could give it a 5, what I would like to have changed, I'd like to see more of the cult. I'm really interested in cult psychology. It's one of my favorite topics to learn about and to read about and to that sort of thing, because there's so much in cult psychology about like brainwashing and the charismatic cult leader and getting people to separate themselves, isolate themselves from family, and become invested in this cult so that they can be manipulated. Now, for certain reasons which I understand, the main character really couldn't experience a lot of that because she wasn't super involved in the cult. She was just superficially a part of it. But I would have loved to have seen more of that, and this would have been a higher rating, but I did like it. Next book I read was The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. This was also a 4-star book with an amazing cover. Themes. This book is about a town of people in the 1960s in Alaska, so right around statehood. And it was just really warm and short. I love a warm, short book. And it was cool just to learn about the culture of the people in this town, how their lives are different from some other people, like in a more urban area, how they live. It was cool to read about the characters. They all felt pretty authentic. However, there were too many characters. Like, there is even in the very, very front of the book, which I did appreciate, there is a page of characters, kind of like in a play. So it was nice to be able to flip back and forth, but look how many characters are in this book, and look how short the book is. Even with that cast of characters, it was too confusing. And it was one of those books where everyone sort of convenes at the end. It was very kind of like Love Actually, except I love Love Actually. But sometimes in writing, the links between people and what brings them together with seemingly random people that you read about earlier in the book can feel kind of heavy-handed and like too convenient, and like just kind of forced, right? So I wish there were less characters, and I wish the ending didn't feel as forced, and this would have probably been a much higher rating. But also, pretty good, 4 stars. With a pretty cover. So I found most of the books that I read this month to be pretty good, and I'm gonna totally ruin it now and end on a sour note, and it's gonna totally suck. The last book I read was Dog Millionaire, and this only got a 2.5 out of 5. And that may be a little generous. If you haven't seen the movie, it's about a kid from the slums of India who goes on a game show that's really similar to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he gets all the questions right and he wins, and there's this investigation because he had to have cheated because he's an uneducated kid from the slums, and he tells a story, the story of his life, and he recounts all the different questions he asked on the game show and why he knew the answer to all the questions, because they all had something to do with his life. Sounds convenient, right? Well, that's exactly how it's read. The stories don't seem like they're all happening to the same person, and it all just feels too convenient and random, and it was just fine. It was a cool concept. There was a cool twist on the ending, which I didn't really see coming in with this kind of book. But the biggest thing that it had to have lost at least 1.5 stars is there is this huge problem I have with this book. It has this really weird approach to homosexuality. The problem with this author is they paired every evil character who was a criminal in some way, they paired them with homosexuality. So every bad person in the book was a homosexual. Every homosexual in the book was a bad person, or they were a criminal in some way. So the fact that this author was pairing criminality with homosexuality more than once, probably at least 3 times, was a big problem for me. Implying a lot here with, implying that the characteristics of one go with the other. And it's not that it would have just happened one time, that would be so bad. It happened 3 different times. These evil men who would prey on children, they were pedophiles, and they would abuse little boys. This happened multiple times in this book with different characters, and it was a big problem. The first time I read it, I was like, well, that's not so great, but it kept happening. And I understand there's a certain cultural aspect to that. Other cultures do not view homosexuality the same way that other areas do, or as individuals in those areas do. Everyone views things differently. But those were distinct choices that the author made several times, and it really turned me off, and I don't ever want to read this again. So these are the 6 books that I read in the month of July, and they were all pretty good except this. I'm gonna just get rid of that one. They were all pretty good books. I really liked it. And, oh yeah, the books that I read for the Booktube-a-thon were The Smell of Other People's Houses, The Girls, Slumdog, and I started the first half of The Fill-In Boyfriend, which I have since finished, and you'll see that in my August wrap-up. I gotta go. I have the air conditioning off because it's too loud to film next to it, and I'm sweating, so I gotta go. Oh, question of the video. What book have you read that you've had a major problem with and have either given it a poor rating on principle alone, or have decided to throw it out, or donate it, or get rid of it in some way? What book out there has really given you a reaction that made you really feel uncomfortable with it? Because also maybe I'll steer clear of it in the future. Okay, I'm dying. I gotta go. I'll see you guys later. Bye!